is going on, Only Playbook fans? We are back. It is a full house today. Dr. Oja has blessed us with his presence. You've been doing a lot of late night, overnight shifts, so your schedule's been wonky as hell. Appreciate you coming on. Make us sound smarter when we have to talk about these injuries. We're the Only Playbook. Fantasy championships are over. Did you win? Did you lose? We'll talk all about that. I'm Sweetcar Shashot Shovit. You guys are here. How are you guys feeling today amidst all of the weird chaos, everything that went on last night, your fantasy football finals, your team? Like, there's just so many emotions all over the field. I just kind of want to gauge where you guys are at today.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to be back to talk about this kind of stuff because there's some really cool takes that I didn't get to share with you guys, and there's a lot of bad takes that I'm glad I didn't get to share with you guys the last couple of weeks. But yeah, last night, I mean, I guess all things there's really only one thing to talk about, and it's how that game stopped halfway through the first quarter because of our friend Damar Hamlin, who literally died on the field and had to be brought back to life. So that's something we haven't seen. I have never seen that before. I think there was something close to that when it was like 1999 in NCAA, but that was the whole world was kind of at a standstill at that point.
Yeah, it's crazy. I was watching some videos on it, and it's such a rare occurrence, right? Like the fact that that happened in that timing that it did with the heart beating. It's just like it's crazy. You hate to see it, and I'm glad that they didn't decide to continue on the game. And there's people out there, but you talk about bad takes. Skip Bailey is out here saying stupid shit, and then people saying vaccine is it vaccinated? I was like, what are you talking about
Yeah.
right now? But I'm sure you can clear some of those things up of what's going on and what happened there.
Yeah, I mean, so we see this type of stuff like every day, right? Like I'm about to go into work right now and I'm working in the ICU this month and this is the case like we see at least 3 people a day that have things that happen to their heart, cardiogenic shock. And then they have to this exact same process. We do CPR every night and put them on these medications every night, but the fact about how this happened is the weird thing. It is the second most cause of like death in athletes, this right here. I know we don't see it's not common, but it is the second most common in death in athletes. So what exactly happened was he got hit in the heart. A lot of people thought he got hit in the neck or he had a concussion. There's this thing called neurogenic shock. Something happens to your spinal cord, and then you can kind of this type of stuff can happen. You can get a concussion, and this kind of stuff can happen. But the fact that he was pulseless, right? That just means one thing, and that means you're not getting blood flow. And the reason this happened was because he got hit in the heart so hard that the electric conduction, I don't know if many people know, but there's electricity that runs the heart, right? It's called the SA node. It's like the pacemaker for your heart, and that's how you get your heartbeat. This electricity travels through your heart, and it pumps at the pace it pumps. And when that electrical conduction gets stopped because of a traumatic like hit, uh, you go pulseless, and that's what happened to him. That's why he fell to the ground. His heart wasn't pumping, and he got CPR for 9 to 12 minutes, which is a long time. That's an extremely long time for someone to be pressing. And what I don't understand is he had pads on, right? So you're not getting proper CPR through those pads unless they're putting something underneath. I'm sure they did what they needed to do. They created that circle around that event, so we couldn't really see what was going on, but we got little peeks, and it was enough to know that they were doing CPR. But the fact of the matter is he has pads on, right? So how is the NFL going to take care of this? How do you fix this? Maybe they have to create certain pads that like you can like rip off really easily, or something needs to be done. Is there even going to be football rest of the year, right? Like we live in the world of social media. This created a huge awareness all over the world about how dangerous football is. It's rare, right? But it can happen. So I don't know how they're going to target all this. Nobody knows. The fact of the matter is he actually got a pulse back. It's called ROSC. They were able to get his heart pumping again. The sad part is it took so long for that to happen. So he could have something called anoxic brain injury, which means the blood flow wasn't enough to get blood flow to the brain, and now the brain is damaged. So he likely won't be playing football again, but let's just hope he can see his family and like be aware of it, know who his family members are and talk and walk. Like that's the major concern here. Football is a long shot at this point. Let's just hope he can, live a like I don't even want to say fruitful, but like let's just hope he can live to like do things in this world.
Yeah, I mean, it's you guys are Spot on. It's just hard to sum it up into words because, like you said, this is the first time we've come across anything of this nature. And, you know, every time we have severe injuries, like I always gauge injuries because it's hard for me to know what actually happened on the field, right? They cut it to camera, they cut it to commercial break, usually when somebody gets hurt. And when it comes back, a lot of times it's like, okay, they're already off the field, plays
Yeah.
resuming, or, oh, they're bringing out the stretcher. So you're kind of gauging the severity of things when,
Yeah.
like, you come back from, commercial break and nothing has happened, right? There's more people huddled around the field, and then you start to like see individual players' reactions,
Yeah.
and that's all you really have to go off of. And then, like, when I saw Diggs and I saw Josh Allen and like his reaction, like I got goosebumps, right? I got chills, and I'm like, okay, this is clearly something a little bit bigger. And the fact that how quickly the ambulance was already on the field, right? I feel like usually they wait for that. They usually bring out like a stretcher, or they bring something out that's not as severe or as like frightening for common folk who don't know the medical world to see like an ambulance on the field. And so again, for us, we're viewers, we're spectating a sport for entertainment, for enjoyment. We have fantasy football on the line, we have bets on the line, it's our favorite team, etc., right? Championship week. But something like that happens, and then it just kind of takes all of that out of the play, and you're just like, oh my god, like, we're watching a sport that, like you said, the second most common, even though it's not frequent, but like, athletes can literally drop dead or have something so severe like that happen. And it makes you pause just in life in general. And it's like, we watch this every day, all week. We praise football, we talk football day in and day out. We can't wait for football to come back up. We want to shit on these athletes that suck for us in fantasy, or like our favorite team and all that. And that's natural, that's normal, that comes with the territory of being a fanatic, being a sports fan, being a diehard. But every once in a while, stuff like this happens, and it makes you kind of take a step back, and you're like, okay, so me shitting on my fantasy football Justin Jefferson for only getting one catch for 15 yards in my finals may not be the end all be all, because these people are literally putting their lives on the line to play football, so for our entertainment, right? So again, I feel like all of us, the entire world, basically, it's cool to see like hockey, soccer, guys, everybody's coming together for this player, for this human being. And right now we don't have clear enough updates to know really what has progressed since last night he's been taken to the hospital. So I think everybody's just kind of waiting on word on how to proceed. And obviously this is a show that we talk about fantasy football, right? So that it feels so insignificant, but the reality of how we're handling this championship week is, it's just kind of a wait and see. Like, what is the NFL going to do with this game? Is it going to be canceled, and how we're going to proceed? But I think first and foremost, we're all hoping Damar Hamlin is okay. Like you said, who cares about football? Let's just hope this guy can live a normal life, because football is such a small part of your life as a whole anyways. Like, the career lifespan for football players is not very high anyways, right? So there's so much more life to be had after football. Let's just hope he can have that. Let's hope we get good news, and proceed accordingly. But one of the scariest things I've ever seen, and Shovit, you and I talked about it, like, this year injuries just have felt scarier and more severe, specifically like head injuries, concussions. Like, you're visually seeing these guys like get up and then fall back, or like do this weird dizziness, like just things that make you really just kind of, shiver a little bit when you see it happen. And, like you said, Shishot, are they going to have to put more emphasis on this? Because all it takes is one, right? All it takes is one time for something this severe to happen to be like, okay, maybe our shoulder pads need to come down further because we need to have more protection around our heart. And I don't know, like, I don't know what all of that's going to happen and what the ripple effect or the domino effect of this is going to be. But again, first and foremost, let's hope he's okay. And that's going to give all of us in the entire world just kind of a sigh of relief, and the ability to kind of move forward with enjoying football from an entertainment standpoint till we kind of get word on what happens. But scary stuff. I mean, silver lining, Damar Hamlin had a GoFundMe back in 2020 where he was donating kids toys for kids. And I think the goal back in 2020 when he started it was 2,500, right? $2,500. And as of earlier today, when I checked, I mean, that thing has surpassed $4 million. So it's just, things like this can get the world to come together. We live in a world that's so divided. We live in a world where, you say one thing and everybody just comes at you, like Shovit, like the people that are coming in saying, was he vaccinated? Like, I don't even know how your thought even goes there when you see something like that, but that's the kind of world we live in, right? Where everybody wants to be divided one way or the other. So sad way for the world to have to come together, but at least it's kind of a silver lining, and I'm hopeful that he gets to see the impact that his life and the fragility of his life had on the rest of the world. So that's really, really cool. I'll put that link in the bio and underneath our YouTube video. So if anybody wants to donate, feel free to do so. That was going to be my water cooler talk, but you guys kind of segued right into it, which is fantastic. And again, if we get more updates, we have a doctor in-house, so hopefully he can provide us with more clarity on the situation. I know it's tough to do, guys, but let's go ahead and run into the recap of this episode with the action that we saw this weekend with the running. I'll kick things off. First game on the board, the Arizona Cardinals and the Atlanta Falcons played a pretty much meaningless game. No playoff implications, very few players with fantasy implications in this game. The Arizona Cardinals traveled to Atlanta. Atlanta was favored by 4.5 points at home. They end up winning the game 20-19, but the Cardinals covered the spread under 42.5 cashes. Arizona now sitting at 12-4. Atlanta is 6-10. The biggest players to really highlight in this game, I mean, James Conner, if you had him, you started him, 16 for 79 on the ground, 3 for 31 through the air. Not a bad day. He didn't find the end zone like he typically does to inflate his fantasy numbers, but still you'll take that from James Conner. On the receiving core, Hollywood Brown, 6 for 61. Greg Dortch, we talked about him. We were pretty high on him just with the lack of playmakers and the volume that he was getting when he was playing in games where there were playmakers absent. He ended up getting 10 targets, but only caught 4 of them for 15 yards. On the other side, Tyler Algier was a big must play this week, just with the volume and the fact that the carries and the workload seemed to be shifting more towards him versus Cordero Patterson. 20 carries, 83 yards, and found the end zone, caught 1 pass for 12 yards. So if you had him, you're probably pretty happy with the output. And if you somehow decide to start Cordero Patterson, you end up having a pretty decent day as well. 9 for 42 on the ground, found the end zone, 6 catches for 42 yards. So pretty decent day for him. Overall, the Falcons take care of business. There's really nothing much for these guys to play for. Arizona still, I think, has a chance to fall into the top 5 from a draft pick perspective. But other than that, meaningless game. Hopefully the players that you had in this game that played for you in the championship performed.
Yeah, it sucks for CPAT, man. He's like, if you just look at the amount of touches he gets per game, if you give him the amount of touches Algier gets, he probably gets better numbers, but that's not what the Falcons are playing for, right? They're trying to see what Algier has for their future. So that's, poor CPAT. He's so good at what he does, probably better than most people at what he does, but just kind of get tossed around and always try to find a shinier tool everywhere he goes. Next game we have up is the Bears at the Lions. Detroit was favored by 6. The overhit at 43, or the underhit at the overhit at 43. Just another magical story for Detroit. They're 8-8 now. Wow, these teams in the Vikings division, man. Like, we're talking about the NFC East being the threat in the playoffs. Absolutely not. The tides have changed. It is now the NFC North. Nobody wants to play these teams. They probably want to play the Vikings more than any of them, because you either get a really big beatdown of the Vikings or it's a close game, right? The Vikings never just beat people outright. So everybody wants to play them. But the two teams you don't want to play are the Packers and the Lions. And we're going to talk about the Lions here real quick. All they have to do is beat the Packers next week and a loss from the Seahawks at home, which is probably going to be on the tougher side. But if they do that, they're in the playoffs, and every other team better watch the hell out, because this offense, I would argue, is probably top 3 offenses in the league right now. Like, that's crazy to say that with all these Mahomeses and Allens and all these Hurtses and everything. But I don't know, man. Like, we didn't get a full game from the Allenses yesterday to kind of evaluate this further, because they've been kind of on this weird teeter-totter. We're a powerhouse, but we're also making a lot of mistakes kind of a situation. The Lions on this end, they're not making mistakes, man. And one of the biggest reasons for this is the yards before contact. It's crazy. They're one of the best teams in the league in yards before contact. The Lions gave up 66 yards before contact. Okay, per attempt, that's 2 yards per run before they get touched. That's unreal. Imagine Swift and Jamal Williams getting 2 yards of free play before they even get another person around them. Now imagine if that was like Najee Harris or like some other running backs that are powerful, much more powerful than these two. That's game over. Like, you don't lose football games getting 2 yards for free every play. You just don't. So that being said, the Lions are winning almost all their games, and this is another reason why the offensive line is so important. You can have all these Swiss Army players all over the field, but if you're not, Swiss Army players, like, for example, look at Justin Jefferson, one of the greatest players of all time, but we're losing games. But look at the Lions. They don't really have this Swiss Army knife anywhere. They have a lot of like above average players, but they're winning games. And that's because if you have a good offensive line, you're going to win every game. It's just the fact of the matter. But from a fantasy football perspective, Justin Fields had a great day on the ground. He's doing what he normally does, 132 yards on 10 carries with long runs, all this cool stuff. He's now on pace to break Lamar Jackson's single season rushing record for a quarterback, and he's missed what feels like half the year. So that's pretty incredible. But from a passing perspective, it's still poor. 7 for 21 for 75 passing yards, right? I know their game script is not throwing the ball, it's running the ball, and they did that well, but you can't do that when you're going against a firepower like Detroit, and they got embarrassed for that reason. One thing to highlight, Aiden Hutchinson, he's killing it this year. He's leading all rookies with 48 pressures, and he's number 4 amongst all rookies, not just defensive ends. All defensive rookies in interceptions. Yes, that's his third interception this year. Fourth, man, that's some TJ Watt shit, man. Like, I think we have a new mini TJ Watt in the works here, and that's another reason to be scared of the Lions. Jared Goff, doing crazy, impressive Jared Goff things this year. 21 for 39, 255, and 3 touchdowns. Swift, man, I'm playing against Swift right now, and I don't know if this game is going to be over or what, but he's got 25 fantasy points this week, man, and he was doing so poorly, on and off all year long, and bam, right when it's game time, right when it's time for me to shine, he drops 25 and makes life hard for me. He did good on the ground and in the air. Jamal Williams did really good on the ground. He had double the amount of rushing attempts as Swift and capitalized off of that with almost double the yards. 22 rushes for 144 yards and a touchdown, 1 catch for 13 yards. Brock Wright rumbled into the end zone twice on 3 catches. And then Amon-Ra had a quiet day in the finals, 4 catches for 62 yards. But they didn't. That's the thing. They don't need these players to shine. Like a lot of other teams need their superstars to shine. The Lions are finding ways to win without their superstars doing anything. So that's another reason to be scared of the Lions.
Yeah, they have a very well-rounded team. Like you said, I mean, they don't have to force feed one person the ball. You see DJ Chark make big catches, right? You see Brock Wright. Like, was it last week or 2 weeks ago, Shovit, where Shane Zylstra had 3 touchdown catches? Like, yeah, they have random people making plays. And Shishot, you hit the nail on the head. It starts with the offensive line. When the offensive line is giving Goff millions of seconds to throw the football, you're going to have your third string tight end get open, right? So it's like he can basically scan all of his reads, wait till somebody comes open, so he doesn't have to try to force the ball like the Vikings, do with Justin Jefferson. So it's like exactly your point. I mean, it's a scary team when, they're all playing for each other and there's not one guy that's like, demand me the football, and so, right now, Detroit, I think plays Green Bay next week. And so, if they beat Green Bay, they win. But the only thing is the Seattle game happens before this game because I think they flex the Green Bay Detroit game. So if Seattle wins, then all Detroit's really playing for is spoiler to make sure that Green Bay doesn't make it.
And
Green Bay is that winning in.
Their heart out to do that.
100%. You know that regardless of whether they have a win and in or they are already out of it, they're going to give it everything they got. And that's kind of what you can always expect from Detroit.
Yeah, that should be a good game to watch. All right, next up, we've got the Denver Broncos at Kansas City to face the Chiefs, 24-27. The Chiefs come out with a win on that game. Denver was, Chiefs are favored by 12.5. They do not cover that spread, just classic Chiefs stuff. The over hits at 45 points. The Broncos, so nothing really to note as far as fantasy-wise that worked out in your favor. No Broncos receiver had more than 45 receiving yards. Greg Dulcich is out, so Albert Okwuegbunam had 3 receptions, 45 yards, and a touchdown. I wouldn't take that to the bank or anything like that. Eric Saubert was in the game as well for Dulcich. So next year, maybe they move on from Okwuegbunam. We'll see. But nothing to note on that. Russell Wilson had 1 rushing touchdown and 1 passing touchdown. Good for him. Probably not the best for your fantasy team if you decide to start him against the Kansas City Chiefs. But yeah, that's all I've got for the Broncos. I mean, nothing to be excited about fantasy-wise. On the Chiefs, big Mahomes days. So 3 touchdowns, 328 yards, 1 interception. I mean, I wonder if that pass that he threw and it gets tipped and he caught. I didn't check, but I wonder if that was a reception for Mahomes because that was
counts as a reception.
It counts as a reception.
Does, yeah.
That was spectacular. And seeing him get the first down, that was a really nice play. McKinnon, again, continuing to shine, getting into the red zone, 2 touchdowns on 5 catches, 52 yards. Kelsey had a decent day. Watson gets a touchdown in the end zone. So, not the best fantasy day for Kelsey, but they've got enough options to get into the red zone. So they did. Kelsey just wasn't needed in that area. And Pacheco, 31 yards, but he salvages his fantasy day with getting into the red zone. The score was close, 24-27. I think the Broncos defense did a pretty good job at crucial times, had interceptions in the red zone, and good, not as many conversions on third down from the Chiefs. So they had a chance in the fourth quarter, but Chiefs come in and sack Russell Wilson when it's 4th and 2, and They were able to end the game, get the ball back, get a first down, and end the game. And Chiefs ended up winning this game. But Broncos did have a chance, and it was mainly because of their defense, in my opinion. But Chiefs are now at 13-3, and Denver falls to 4-12. So Chiefs looking for that number one spot in the AFC to get that bye for playoffs.
Yeah, which again is super pending with how
Yeah.
are they going to handle the game last night, right?
They're not playing it this week, so I think fantasy's done for. You know what Sleeper's doing as far as options? Did you guys see?
They just whatever you got is what you have, right?
No, well, yeah, but also if this game gets played at a different time in a different week, they're giving league manager options. There's a little thing under league settings in Sleeper where they're letting the managers accumulate the points for that game. Like they're leaving it up to the league managers. That's going to
makes
cause
sense.
so many problems. But you can't do that on ESPN or Yahoo. You cannot let the league manager add or remove points. So I think it's done for. I think there's just going to be a lot of upset people and just, but whatever. It is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a good point, and I think we can kind of talk circles about that. But like, how as one's commissioners, or I'm a commissioner of our league, and Shisha, you've been a commissioner before. Like, how would you handle this situation, right? Because it's like, is it fair to just split the pot between the two players? I mean, does that make sense? Like,
yeah,
or is every situation handled differently? Where it's
right.
like, you were up 60 points and they have like a kicker left, so it's inevitable that you were going to win, but the final score is not the final score yet, So it's like, how do you really handle it?
Yeah. So what I've done, I think this has happened. Things like this have happened like twice when I was commissioner for whichever league. I remember just giving the average of that player, his league average for that player that who's on that roster at that time. Mm-hmm. Or sometimes you add like the next available bench guy on your roster. But yeah, there's things like that available. It's just people don't know how to typically react to those type of things. So it just creates chaos. I don't see this ending well for fantasy football purposes.
Yeah. I would add that if the game is already over, like you have no players that were playing on Monday Night Football and you lost, then you lose, right?
Yeah.
But if it's 100%. Like a 31 points and you have, Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase, at that point, instead of giving the average, I would even try to split in the pot and 50-50 for first and second place, because, how do you know really what was going to be the outcome?
You don't.
Yeah, that's true. And again, at the end of the day, like, push comes to shove, does it really all that matter? Like if you're splitting winnings of money of a league, like you still won, right? I mean, you didn't win the traditional way, but that's why we're having this conversation, because traditional things were not happening, obviously, last night. So
one other thing to add, like I am on actually the bad side of this in the other league. I had Diggs down 24 points, right? Started off great first drive. He got like almost 4 points that first drive alone. So I was like pretty happy with how things are going. But once this happened, I quickly realized I'm like, this guy's dying. That means I was just kind of extrapolating throughout that process. And I was like, they're not going to play this game today. There's no way. And they're probably not going to play this game at all this week because it's just going to be a short week for the, week 18. And I was like, there's no way they're going to play this game. So I had already realized that I lost that week, right? But then once we talk about splitting the pot and stuff, like it almost seems unfair, right? Like you're down 24 points with one player left, and he's only hit over 24 points twice all year out of 15 games. I'm like, I don't deserve to win this. You know what I mean? Like, it is. And then the guy I was playing, he's like, you know what, man? Like, that's fine. I'll take a bubble trophy. He's like, like it doesn't feel good winning it either, right? So it's like, what are you gonna do? Who cares at this point? Is what it kind of feels like. But,
I agree. It's such uncharted territory that shit. I mean, if the best case scenario is both the first and second place people get to take home winnings, and I mean, whatever, like it is what it is. So, I mean, I think I do agree though. There's going to be people that try to make this way more complicated, are aggressive, or like, not happy about it. But like, again, this is not a common occurrence. So you just kind of have to roll with the punches. But a lot of people don't know how to do that. Let's take it to New England, where the Patriots were hosting the Dolphins in a big divisional matchup, playoff implications on the line. The Patriots come away victorious 23-21. They were favored by 2. The spread pushes over 41 cashes. They're both 8-8 now. The Patriots basically have to win in week 18 at Buffalo, or the Dolphins have to lose versus the Jets, and the Steelers have to lose versus the Browns, and the Jags have to win versus Tennessee for the Patriots to clinch. For the Dolphins, they basically just have to win and a Patriots loss, and they clinch. So it's a lot more clear cut for Dolphins to make the playoffs, but the Dolphins situation is murky. I mean, you had Teddy Bridgewater start this game, get hurt. Skylar Thompson came in. I think Mike McDaniel already said Tua's going to be out for week 18 anyways, right? With the concussion stuff. So for them, how much stock do you put into them making the playoffs? First of all, like winning week 18 is one thing, but you make the playoffs with your third string quarterback. What are they really going to do? But I mean, the story here from fantasy perspective, I had Raheem Mostert. He's been such an anomaly. I mean, 9 carries for 29 yards, but he has his biggest pass catching week of the season. 8 catches for 62 yards and found the end zone. So that was a nice day if you somehow decided Mostert was the start there. The receiving core, I mean, Tyreek Hill, 4 catches, 55 yards, not great, but salvaged the day. 1 rush, 2 yards, and found the end zone. So that touchdown, that rushing touchdown, gave him a decent day. Jalen Waddle, 3 catches, 52 yards. So another pretty disappointing performance. But all of that is kind of maybe outside of Hill to be expected when you knew Teddy Bridgewater was going to be the starting quarterback. Obviously, you couldn't have prepared for Teddy to get hurt and Skyler to come in as well. On the Patriots side, I played against Ramondre Stevenson this week, and I expected big things, and man, did he lay a dud. 8 carries for 42 yards, caught 2 passes for 9 yards. The really only good player on the Patriots side from a fantasy perspective, Jacoby Myers, 6 catches, 48 yards, and found the end zone. So interesting game. Again, it's not full force. It wasn't the Dolphins with Tua clicking on all cylinders. You had your third string quarterback come in and play most of this game. Patriots, again, have won, but their path, despite winning this game, is a lot tougher than the Dolphins. The Dolphins just have to win and hope the Patriots lose, and the Patriots play Buffalo. Buffalo still has a lot to play for, that number 1 seed. So it seems like Miami, as long as they can take care of business and they beat the Jets, they're going to make the playoffs. So that'll be something to watch out for there.
Yeah, what's crazy is not much has changed from a record perspective for the Dolphins from last year, right? All these changes, firing of the coaches, getting a new coach, getting new players, Tyreek Hill, it's the same record. Same record. And at the end of the day, injuries have been a big part of why this is the way it is. They're a much better team than the what's it called, the standings show. But, at the end of the day, your backups have to be prepared. Look at Brock Purdy, right? Like Teddy Bridgewater, man, just not going to cut it. And then Skylar Thompson, yikes. I don't know if he'll ever win a game in the NFL. Next game up we have here is the Colts at the Giants. The theme today was freaking Daniel Jones' thick ass legs. Man, the Giants clinched their first playoff berth since 2017. The defense only allowed 3 first downs all game on third downs. So that's very impressive. 3 for 12. And you win games like that. I don't know of a team that's ever won a game only getting 3 first downs, but it wasn't going to happen today. Daniel Jones was efficient, to say the least, with 79% completion percentage and 87% if you adjust the completion percentage, meaning all the spikes don't count, all the throwaways don't count. And all the drops don't count. So played a really, really good day of football overall. He had 91 yards on the ground. It felt like 300. And he had 2 touchdowns on the ground. So, yeah, just a great day by Daniel Jones. Just put the whole team on his back because Saquon really didn't get to do what he normally does. What's his name? Breida actually had a better day. Even though Saquon had 3 more carries, 12 carries for 58 yards for Saquon, 9 carries for 59 yards for Breida. Saquon did catch 2 passes, but he got -5 yards on that, so he only got the 0.5 yards for that. But just it's amazing. The Giants are doing what they need to do at the last possible minute right before the playoffs. How are they doing this? It's not just Daniel Jones' leg, although this game was Daniel Jones' legs. It's Andrew Thomas, man, one of the best young offensive tackles, left tackles in the game, and he's 23 years old. He allowed 0 pressures on 29 pass blocking plays. This is his 5th game this year with a clean sheet, with no pressures, right? That's 5 games when you can just pretend like this side of the field doesn't exist. That's how amazing it is for a quarterback to have no pressure coming from the left side. So that helped them a lot. The only things to note on the Colts side, Zach Moss looks like the guy. So if Taylor is gone or whatever over the offseason, traded, I don't know, whatever happens to him, Zach Moss will get the beneficiaries of that. Not much to ride on there, but take it how you want to take it. 15 carries for 74 yards. And then Pittman ended up in the end zone. I know it was a blowout or whatever, but 6 catches for 41 yards and a touchdown. Giants receivers still not trustable. I know you see stats here, stats there, but just don't trust them. I don't know if anyone's playing week 18. There are some leagues that do that, but I wouldn't bank on starting Giants receivers. Richie James ended up getting 7 for 7 for 76 and a touchdown, and Isaiah Hodgins, but they haven't really proven their role. This team is very much just going off on what happens that week and just what the defense allows, and that's what makes them scary, in my opinion. There is no game script here. They're just here to win the game no matter what.
Yeah, I felt like Daniel Jones was just one tackle away from giving Saquon Barkley the, fantasy points that you needed, that I needed from Saquon. Being able to, like, I think it's 10 yards out, and he's just able to run it into the touchdown, and no contain whatsoever, was so disappointing to see from the Colts side. And then they were up by, so many points that Breda comes in and takes over the rest of
Yeah,
the
they
playing
benched
job.
their starters
Yeah.
early. I mean,
Yeah.
like, I don't think I expected that to happen. And, I was a Jones and Barkley owner. So luckily for me, everything that didn't go to Barkley was going to Jones. But yeah, I mean, exactly. Like that one rush where he kind of reached out, like if they would have just marked him out at the 1/2 yard line, that's a Saquon touchdown
Yeah.
easily, right? And all of a sudden Saquon has double digits and it looks a lot better. So Daniel Jones, I mean, championship week really, really came to play.
Awesome. Next game on board, New Orleans Saints at Philadelphia Eagles, and they actually come out with a win in this game, 20-10 against the Eagles. Eagles were favored by 5.5. They do not cover that spread, and the under hits at 41.5 points. So on fantasy wise, Alvin Kamara had a decent game, 16 carries, 74 yards, 4.6 average carry. So that's not too bad for Kamara. That's a good sign moving on to next year, I believe.
Yeah, it's gonna be
Taysom.
someone else's problem though. I can guarantee you that.
And he's probably going to face suspension allegations. So
That's
Kamara's
true.
fantasy, and he's 27 next year. So I think we've seen the best of Alvin Kamara
I
already.
agree. I would agree.
Yeah. Taysom Hill, 14 carries, 46 yards, and a touchdown. The gift that keeps on giving with their injuries that they see in the running back position. He was like basically the RB2 there, and gets you the fantasy points with that touchdown. Shaheed was the best receiver of fantasy wise, 6 receptions, 79 yards. Even with Olave on the field, it looks like Shaheed got the beneficiary of that, and that's just how this game turned out. But I wouldn't take that. I wouldn't put anything into that. On the Eagles side, not the great day for Minshew Magic. 274 yards, one touchdown, also had an interception. Sanders, only 61 yards on 12 carries, but the receivers did really well. Devontae Smith, 9 catches, 115 yards. So if you
It's a
have
beast, man.
if you have the receivers, you're probably still happy there. And AJ Brown, 4 catches, 97 yards, and that one long touchdown to salvage
So
his
annoying.
fantasy day. The Saints just had a really good defense on the Eagles. The Eagles were shut out in the first half for the first time this season, and they didn't convert a first down until 12 seconds in the second half. So that really helped their chances to win. And the Saints, this is the third straight game that they're winning. So closing out the season on a good note, even though they do not, make the playoffs. I think this happened last year too. The Saints just find a way to be below average, but not the worst team. The Eagles need to beat the Giants next week to secure the top seed. And Cowboys. oh, Sorry, let me start that over. Eagles need to beat the Giants next week to secure the top seed. If they lose and the Cowboys win, then the Cowboys are the NFC East champions. So really need to win that game against the Giants next week.
Come
It
on.
helps that the Giants have clinched, so they don't have anything to play for. So
Yeah.
I'm expecting Jones,
Yeah.
Barkley, all the guys to be benched. So it's really easy
They
for
said
the
no
Eagles.
though.
They said no.
They
Yeah.
both said he's going to play all his starters. It's probably
Did
just
he?
going to start for the
Yeah.
half, and then I
Yeah,
think
exactly. So did Trevor Lawrence, and then they played like one half. But yeah, I would expect that they are not going to play. And for the Eagles, it looks like Hurts is probably going to push to play. So the Eagles are going to be at full force. So just a lot more to play for Philly. The last thing I'll say about the Saints is their defense has gotten better. I mean, Marshawn Lattimore first came back, has a pick six, right? So that dude is an immediate impact player. And the team, despite their just like inability to do anything on offense, like watching the Saints offense is very frustrating, especially I can't imagine if as a Kamara owner, just watching the offense unfold where Taysom Hill comes in every other play, like that's just got to be frustrating. But the defense has been rock solid. I mean, if you go back to the last like 10 games, I think they've only given up over 20 points like once or twice. So they've been very, very good. The battle of the NFC South, win and in for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers hosting the Carolina Panthers. If the Panthers win this game, they would have to hope the Buccaneers lose next week or they win out and they would make the playoffs. It was a good game, but all of a sudden, out of nowhere, turn back the clock, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Tom Brady, Mike Evans, and the whole shebang came back and came out of nowhere. They win this game 30-24. Tampa Bay covers the spread for over 40 cashes. They clinch this out. Brady with probably the best game of his season, 432 yards and 3 touchdowns, saves it for the most important game of the year so far for him. Leonard Fournette, Rachaad White, both guys were pretty lackluster, 10 for 28 on the ground, 4 for 19 through the air for Lenny. White, 11 for 22 on the ground, 5 for 26 through the air. But my, oh my, Mike Evans, shove it. You and I talked about him in like 2-3 straight episodes. And every episode I was like, Evans has done nothing for the last 10, 11 weeks to warrant getting a start in the championship game against the Panthers. And then I said, the only reason why you would think about starting him is JC Horn got hurt. And JC Horn is out. So that's the outside corner. There's a chance he probably locks up Evans. So if he's out, that's kind of the only saving grace. And I don't know that that was the reason it mattered, but it seemed like all season long, Tom Brady was trying to throw these bombs to Evans and they were either overthrown or Evans was dropping it, or it was, in like double coverage. And somehow, some way, this game, this guy throws 3 dots, 10 for 207 and 3 scores for Mike Evans. I mean, if you started Mike Evans this week,
You're playing in your seventh, what's it called? The third place game, or you're playing in your 7th place game, your
right.
9th place game.
Very rarely this year would I think a Mike Evans owned team, like a team that owns Mike Evans, made it to the finals. So yeah, if that happened to you and you still decided to roll everything, risk everything and start him, then it paid off for you, man. I mean, kudos to you if you did that. Yeah, I mean, you really do. I personally wouldn't have done it, and I would have, shit on myself for it. But what's great is Chris Godwin also had a great day. 9 catches, 120 yards. He didn't get any of the touchdowns that Evans got, but Mike Evans, man, he probably won you your fantasy league if you started him. If you didn't start him and he sat on your bench, you probably lost your fantasy and you're kicking yourself for it. But don't be too hard on yourself. Evans had shown nothing to deserve a start. He just ended up blowing up and, making up for the 10 weeks in a row where he hadn't caught a touchdown. But Bucs win this game. They take the South. They are now in the playoffs. And, as much as they're 8-8 and Tom Brady looks old and they don't look great, I don't think anybody wants to play Tom Brady in the playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely not. They just keep getting away with it, man. I don't know how. I don't know. Things just work out for Tom Brady, and it's a fact that we cannot dismiss anymore. It just can't be dismissed. Also, Chris Godwin's the best tight end in the league. It's not Travis Kelce. It's not.
He should move to tight end. I mean, all the receiving plays where like the receivers are blocking, he's their best blocker. He's literally their best blocker.
Listen,
I don't know why this guy doesn't line up as a tight end.
He does. He basically does. He's just like 2 feet away.
Yeah, he just stands. He stands.
Yeah, that's all it is. But he does line up as a tight end. That's the thing. It's like I'm getting tired of this. It just hit me like earlier this week. I'm like, Chris Godwin's a fucking tight end. Why has he just fooled this whole world by pretending to be a wide receiver? Look at his routes. He does the same routes as Kelce. He gets the same targets as Kelce. He gets the same. Everything is the same. It's the same thing. It's just he's just a little bit faster and a little bit weaker. But yeah, one of the biggest mistakes. Have you heard the saying like the biggest trick the devil has played is letting you know that he doesn't exist? It's the same thing with Chris Godwin. It's the biggest trick Chris Godwin's played is letting us think he's a wide receiver, and he's not. It's a tight end.
That's very true, man.
All right. Away from all that, this painful season players that I had to, live through. We're going to go to the Browns and the Commanders, where I had no players to worry about. And Commanders, they thought they could change their quarterback back to Carson Wentz. We all thought that was a terrible idea, but they went with it and made them worse. They probably had one of their worst losses of the year after that move. Watson really didn't play good football, to be honest with you. He had 163 yards and 3 touchdowns and 5 sacks, but it was all Amari Cooper. He saved Watson's ass. He had 3 catches for 105 yards and 2 touchdowns, and at least 59, 60 yards of those 105 yards were after the catch. So, Watson's still very much on the struggle bus this week. I think he ended up getting like 21 or 22 fantasy points, but there's a huge asterisk on that in my book if I'm going to compare it to him improving over time. It hasn't happened. Nick Chubb, 14 carries for 104 yards, doing typical Nick Chubb things, I guess. At this point, he had 1 catch for 12 yards. DPJ caught 1 catch, but it was for 13 yards and a touchdown. So just kind of a little bit of, hey, I'm still alive, guys. Don't worry, I'm not going to think about you next year, DPJ. You're dead to me. Other side, Wentz, 3 picks with 5.1 yards per pass. Just, what did we expect? What did they expect?
What were they thinking, guys? Somebody talk me through the logic of Carson Wentz getting the start.
It's the desperation factor because we've seen tenacious. What's his name? Heineke.
Taylor.
We've seen his ceiling, and it's just an ugly ceiling. It's like this, you think that I don't know, man. It's like this ugly little church where it's like pretends to be the Sistine Chapel, but it's like painted by like a 5-year-old child. That's his ceiling. Okay, it's like it looks kind of nice in the dark, but then once you turn the lights on, it's like, okay, what is this? So yeah, that's the thing. Is like they kind of wanted this spark, but it was the Browns, and the Browns are struggling. Why not just go with more tenacity, right?
And it's Carson Wentz. Like it's not like you're upgrading from Tenacious Taylor to like a Hall of Fame, a Super Bowl bound quarterback, or Pro Bowl quarterback.
I
This
know.
guy has been a has-been for years and years
I
and
mean,
years.
I guess he started the year off with like multiple touchdowns and all this little, but it went downhill real quick. And I guess they were just hoping for a change in something, maybe to throw off the Browns, but it didn't. It didn't work. It didn't work. Wentz is that guy. He's a perennial backup. I wouldn't even want him as my backup, to be honest with
No.
you. I would rather take Tyler Heineke as my backup. But anyways, all the receivers on the Redskins side or the Commanders side did nothing. Robinson got 24 carries. That's all you really need to know. 87 yards. Logan Thomas resurgence with Wentz, 6 for 7 for 56 yards, if you want to call it that. I guess you can say they went from 57% chance of the playoffs to just 10% after losing to the Browns.
Yeah, I think they're out of it now. Now that the Packers beat the
Won the
Vikings,
game. That's true.
so they don't even have a chance to get to the playoffs. But it's funny because one of the weird decisions was picking Wentz over Heineke, and the other one was Ron Rivera when he was asked, "Oh, do you guys know that you're out of the playoffs?" And he had no idea.
He's like,
So
we're out.
we're
He's
out.
like, there's a chance we could be out. Like, yeah, that
How
was a
dare
little suspect and surprising. And I back Ron Rivera. They just had that whole video of like, oh, telling your players you made the Pro Bowl. So you're like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
we want to root for the guy. And then you do some stupid shit like this. And like forgetting that in the midst of everything is still fine. But the thing he could have controlled was not start Carson Wentz. And it's like, dude, the entire world basically is telling you don't start Carson Wentz. I think all Commanders fans are saying don't start Carson Wentz. What do? They start Carson Wentz. Like, how many times does the entire world have to say one thing and one person be like, I don't really know, man. I think I'm going to do the opposite, for that person to be like, well, I was fucking wrong. And in this instant, Ron Rivera, you were fucking wrong.
Yeah,
Horrible
absolutely.
decision.
All right, moving on. We're gonna go to We're gonna go to Houston, where Jacksonville Jaguars play the Houston Texans, and the final score was 31-3. Jacksonville was favored by 3 points. They definitely covered that spread. The over/under was at 43. The under hits. The Jacksonville Jaguars, despite benching their players in halftime, definitely win the game as well. Their defense, I think, had a solid game. I think it was 16 fantasy points altogether. Had a fumble return for a touchdown. So played really well. Trevor Lawrence didn't play great, but that was only from one half of play. 152 yards, 1 interception. Etienne, JaMychal Hasty, Gerard Connor, all 3 running backs get into the red zone with a touchdown. Etienne had 9 carries for 108 yards. So a really good day for Etienne owners. And Evan Ingram, only 1 receptions for 16 yards, but and none of the other receivers had a great game either. But there's really no reason to put your starters out there in this game, where the next game against the Tennessee Titans is what's going to determine your playoff spot. So that's understandable as far as the fantasy production there. And then on the Texans side, there's absolutely nothing to note. I mean, yeah, they've got Nico Collins, Brandon Cooks, but that's all this year. I don't know what to do about that moving on to next year. The only guy you're probably gonna pick draft is Dameon Pierce. Outside of that, stay away, and hopefully Texans can get some other running back to kind of be a backup for Dameon Pierce, because I don't think Royce Freeman or the other guy are going to be able to fill that role as effectively. So nothing to note. But the Jags roll 31-3. We'll see if they end up getting to the playoffs next week against the Titans.
Yeah, maybe we can send Dalvin Cook that way and get some money for that while we still can.
That'd be nice. That'd be nice. I mean, the Texans are probably going to draft a quarterback this year, so the Texans are going to be a landing spot for one of the perennial, probably top 3 picks: Bryce Young, Chase Stroud, or CJ Stroud. So that'll at least be something for Texans fans to be like, oh, we have something we can actually watch the future. So that's always nice for them. Probably one of the more surprising games of the week: the Raiders hosted the San Francisco 49ers. Raiders had absolutely nothing to play for. San Francisco still vying for a second seed, maybe even a top seed. 49ers on the road, favored by 9 points. Vegas covers that as the underdog, over 42.5 cashes. Final score 37-34. San Francisco now 12-4 because of the Minnesota loss. They are now the number 2 seed in the NFC. Vegas 6-10. They're out of it. Is it safe to say it was Derek Carr all along? Jared Stidham, man, comes out and slings the football. 365 through the air, 3 touchdowns, did throw 2 interceptions, but did run the ball 7 times for 34 yards. Let me add, this is against San Francisco defense, which is like the number one defense in all of football. This guy was slinging it. Josh Jacobs, 17 carries, 69 yards, and a rushing touchdown, 4 for 26 through the air. So his great season still ended up paying off in the finals as well. He ended up doing a good job for you. Devontae Adams, the guy that, everybody was wondering, second string, third string quarterback. He's already struggling the last 2 weeks with Derek Carr at the helm. What is he going to do? If you started him, which you absolutely should have, 7 catches, 153 yards, and 2 scores. Fantastic day from Adams. Darren Waller, 3 for 72, also found the end zone. On the 49ers side, Brock Purdy, big cock Brock, 284 through the air, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. CMC, man, played a whole healthy-ass season, and what did he do? He just did everything we expect CMC to do. 19 carries, 121 yards, a touchdown, 6 catches for 72 yards. I mean, God, that's a CMC stat line if you've ever seen one. Brandon Ayuk, Shovit, great start with Brandon Ayuk and not starting Greg Dortch. 9 catches, 101 yards, and a touchdown. Fantastic day from him. George Kittle, 4 for 23, also found the end zone. The dude's been scoring a lot of touchdowns recently. Whether you can take that forward next year, I don't know, because every time Debo and Ayuk and the whole shebang is healthy, Kittle is an afterthought. But the minute one of those guys is down, it's like, all right, Kittle, you're up now, and Kittle just becomes a workhorse. So still wait and see on George Kittle. He's definitely not, in my opinion, like the top 3 tight end. Talent-wise, he definitely is, but usage-wise for this offense, he's just not. It's just a sad state for him. So until he becomes like the number 1 or number 2 option on an offense or on this offense, he shouldn't get drafted where his talent would particularly maybe tell you to draft him. But again, very impressed from the Raiders. They have nothing to play for. They've been a shit show. Derek Carr, got kicked off the team basically, and Jared Stidham comes in here and basically almost wins this football game for them. So I was very impressed. If they do decide to trade Derek Carr, it seems like Stidham has at least showed that he deserves to get a look.
Yeah, I think we all would want Derek Carr to just get a fresh start somewhere else. Maybe for the Colts, maybe for the Texans. I don't know.
Jets.
Maybe the Jets. Yeah, that could work out. Well, yeah. So anywhere but where he is right now.
Yeah.
All right. Speaking of the Jets went to go visit the West Coast and went to go check out the Seattle Seahawks. And, it didn't really end too well for them. Geno has mathematically eliminated the Jets from the playoffs while holding on to his slim hope himself. He needs a lot of things going for him his way. We're going to talk about that later this week. But the Seahawks offensive line actually played the worst game of the season. They allowed a season high pressure on 50% of pass plays. That's like Kirk Cousins every single day. That's not a fun day for Geno Smith there. Knowing not sure what the rest of the play is going to look like. They still ended up pulling this off. How did they do that? Well, Kenny Walker had a great day. Very much possibly offensive rookie of the year. I know he missed the beginning of the year, but I don't see anybody else that's really taking this job by storm, this title by storm. So Kenneth Walker will be in the top 3 discussion for sure. 23 rushes for 133 yards. 109 of those came after contact. Even with the poor offensive line play, he still just shrugs people off and gets to where he needs to get to. Another reason for why he should be heavily considered for offensive rookie of the year. Geno Smith ended up getting 2 touchdowns against this difficult Jets pass defense. How did he do that? Well, he didn't throw where all the other quarterbacks have been throwing to and struggling. He threw it to Parkinson for a touchdown and Tyler Mabry for a touchdown, right? So, I mean, that's what I want from a quarterback, man. Like, adjust. You don't have to, do something just because that's how you're supposed to do it. Find ways, find the open players. And that's what Geno did. And that's why, the comeback player of the year discussion is very much alive for Geno Smith here. Like I mentioned, Lockett, Metcalf shut down. Lockett 2 catches for 15 yards. Metcalf 1 catch for 3 yards. You're telling me that
baby. He got lost in the sauce.
Dude, he did. Completely lost in the sauce. I don't know what kind of sauce has, but that sauce is too saucy. It's crazy. It's absolutely nuts. Sauce Gardner is like half the size of DK Metcalf if you're talking about pound for pound, and still gets the job done. It's crazy how it's not so much physicality from a power standpoint, but it's physicality from a technical standpoint. It's crazy. It's amazing how cornerbacks can be so good. Mike White had a pretty terrible day with 2 picks and no touchdowns. Ty Johnson and Zonovan split the 8 carries they had each. Nothing to look into here. Just forget about all these running backs because Bryce will be back next year and he's going to take the job back. Conklin kind of gave you some hope here with 6 catches on 6 targets for 80 yards if you started him in your finals. Garrett Wilson, the other conversation for Offensive Rookie of the Year. He was my Week 3 possible offensive Rookie of the Year, but kind of had this quarterback situation really derail him. I feel like if Zach Wilson was never in the picture, this would be probably a runaway for Garrett Wilson. But this is a pretty average, below average day for him on three catches on 11 targets, which is bad for 18 yards. So just a bad day for the Jets overall. I don't know what's going on with them. It's just everything just derailed after this whole quarterback situation. Also, yeah, we just talked about Sauce, but he, defensive rookie of the year conversation is very much locked up at this point. 2 catches for 13 yards every game. He just does this. It's can't wait to have a shutdown cornerback like this. I wonder what that's like.
Yeah, I know. I miss the days of roads closed, man. It was
Yeah,
like
those
2 years.
1.5 years were
Yeah.
beautiful.
So amazing. It's so nice to have one side of the field to not even worry about. And, the one thing I'll say before we move on to this game is, Mike White had a chance this game to give his team the opportunity to possibly, get close to making the playoffs. He had a chance this game against a piss poor defense to be like, hey guys, next year, give me a look at quarterback because I deserve to get a real look. And it's one of the most advantageous matchups you could have against the Seahawks, whose defense has been giving up everything to everyone. And he looked so bad. Like it looked like it was Zach Wilson in Mike White's jersey. And I'm like, okay, maybe this is all we needed to see from Mike White to know that, he had flashes. And the fact that Zach Wilson plays on that same team makes Mike White look a lot better because Zach Wilson's games are atrocious. But maybe Mike White really is also not the future. So the Jets, a team that's 7-9, now they're mathematically eliminated from the playoffs. They're not going to get the highest draft pick, but they may also be in the market for a future quarterback this early after busting on Zach Wilson.
Yeah, we talked about shutdown cornerback in Sauce Gardner. That takes us to another shutdown quarterback at Green Bay, where the Packers hosted the Vikings, and the final score was 17-41. Packers end up covering that spread of 3.5 points, and the over hit at 47.5. I'll go over the fantasy implications. You guys can go on the talk about maybe the recap and what you didn't like or liked from the Vikings. But the Vikings, Justin Jefferson, that's the biggest news here, held to 1 catch. Jared Alexander, was playing shutdown defense on.
I hate that. I hate this. I hate him. This is the only player in the NFL I truly hate.
That gritty was so disrespectful. It was 3rd and 10, and
it was like the second quarter or like the end of the first.
The first quarter.
So, but like that. Okay, just that before. Sorry, we're cutting you off. But that gritty in that moment lets you know how much it meant to him, and like how much he values himself, and like knew the task and like everything that he had to really back up because all the shit talking, everything, the fluke, whatever. So like you could tell it meant the world to him. That's why he couldn't even contain himself and keep himself composed. He was like grittying harder than like Mike Gesicki after catching a touchdown. He was that.
Let's not forget about that.
It was definitely PI, but whatever. He's an aggressive cornerback and he gets his due. But I'm with you, Shisho. If there's a guy that's immediately made me be like, you know what? I want somebody to just fucking moss that mofo so bad. It's Jair Alexander right now.
Yeah, I mean, like Justin Jefferson had an amazing game, the first game with the Packers, right? Like 2 touchdowns, over 100 yards. And so Jair Alexander wasn't covering him. And one of the things was like, I need to be on this guy. And he stepped up. He put his money where the mouth where the money, whatever. He stepped up and he's shut down Justin Jefferson. And so that definitely did not help the Vikings' case to win this game. TJ Hawkinson, again, 12 targets, 7 catches, 59 yards.
Tight end 2 on the season.
That's really impressive. And something that the Vikings needed all throughout the year, and they're getting that from Hawkinson. So good trade so far. The receiver that stepped up, a la Justin Jefferson not playing so well. KJ Osborne, 7 receptions, 59 yards, and 1 touchdown. Cousins, I talked about him being like top 5 QBs all throughout the last 3 weeks. But this game, 3 interceptions, 1 touchdown, and 205 yards. So just the Vikings, as a team, just didn't show up. On the Packers side, Aaron Jones, 14 carries, 111 yards, also complemented that with 2 receptions and 2 receiving yards. So he had a pretty big day. But I think that the defense for the Packers really did step up. That was kind of their Achilles heel, where they're just not able. The defense isn't playing well, and now Darnell Savage had a 75-yard pick-6 return, which was just one of the 4 turnovers by Minnesota, and Kezian Nixon had a 105-yard kick return. So all those definitely helped out the Packers' chances to win this game. They're still in it at 8-8. Definitely have the chances to make the playoffs, and Minnesota falls to 12-4 on the year.
Yeah, I don't have much to add on that game. It's a classic Vikings performance. Their losses have been ridiculous. Their wins are all close. I don't have a tremendous amount of expectation from this team in the playoffs. It's just, we talk about it. You get in the playoffs, anything can happen. But, the writing's on the wall with this team. There's too many inefficiencies, too many weaknesses. Yeah, they probably get a pretty advantageous matchup with the Giants in the first week and first round. And that's probably the best team the team I would most likely want to play. But beyond that, I don't have much hope for them. Their defense is in shambles. And, we know the defense is bad. And even at times when the defense isn't atrocious, like the offense is just leaving so much to be desired. Like it's not the same fluid. It's not like this top 5 offense. Like it's really not. It's just like, Kirk throwing a shit ton of balls to Justin Jefferson and Hawkinson, and everything else kind of sucks. Like the running game sucks. The offensive line sucks at times. There's really nothing else.
All-pro right tackle O'Neal this game. And we also
he's on the IR.
And we lost
season's over.
Center. So we're down linemen. And this is statistically the worst year for Kirk Cousins from an offensive lineman standpoint, from a pressure standpoint. This year has been the worst year. So it's just going to get worse. I have no expectations. This is just going to be a nightmare. Let's just going to hope for the best and just pray things work out. But expectation wise, I have none. This is looking bad. It's looking very bad.
All right, let's take it to LA, where it was a battle of the LA teams. The Chargers were hosting the Rams. The Chargers were the home team here, favored by 6.5 points. Over under sitting at 42.5. They win the game 31-10. They cover the spread. The under cashes. The Chargers now 10-6. The Rams fall to 5-11. Herbert had one of his better games, which is, it's been a disappointing year for Justin Herbert, fantasy wise and just overall play wise. 212 through the air, 2 touchdowns. Austin Eckler, man, this dude deserves as much praise as praise can be given. This guy is a fantasy MVP. It doesn't matter. I mean, he finishes as RB1 through 17 weeks. There's a good chance he'll finish as RB1 on the season. And there's not a player in all of the NFL that gives more shits about fantasy than Austin Eckler. That's another reason. That's a big reason why you want to draft this guy, because he truly cares about his statistical performances, because he plays fantasy football and he wants to do well for his owners. So Austin Eckler, man, 10 carries only 10 carries, 122 yards and 2 touchdowns. Crazy. It was insanity. Also caught 4 balls for 39 yards, just the icing on cake. Mike Williams, 7 for 94 through the air. Keenan Allen, 5 for 60 through the air. So, I mean, decent performances, but not anything to write home about. Again, it was the Eckler show. The only thing to note on the Rams side, we talked about it, this guy I felt really great about this week. Cam Akers, man, 19 carries, 123 yards, 1 catch for 10 yards. He seems like a bell cow. He seems like a workhorse. This guy's going to get looks as their RB1 next season. So hopefully, the Rams come back and they come back hungry after this disappointing year after the Super Bowl. Tyler Higbee was the other guy you probably debated starting if you started him. Not the greatest day, 3 catches, 11 yards, but the Chargers take care of business. Austin Eckler is, to me, the MVP of fantasy football, and, the guy that, every year, even this upcoming year, you're probably looking at drafting this guy 1. It's going to be him or CMC. They're very, very similar players. We thought the touchdown regression would come when he scored 20 touchdowns last year. Well, he scored 19 this year. So it did not come. He just did everything possible to be a stud. And he was drafted 3rd in our league. And I think he was drafted 3rd in my other league as well. Behind guys like Jonathan Taylor, who's a bust. CMC ended up having a great year. So Austin Eckler, man, you are the MVP. You carry this Chargers team. They're 10-6. They're going to be in the playoffs.
Yeah, absolutely. I like Eckler over CMC just because, like you said, he plays fantasy football and he
cares. He's so involved in it. He cares. He goes out of his way to make videos and be like, yeah, I'm going to play. That's a guy that cares. All the guys that tweet, I could give a shit about your fantasy team. I get that. I totally respect that, because you don't need randos coming into your DMs and being like, you're an idiot, go die because you scored 2 points. Like, there's toxic ass people out there. But again, you can have a good balance and just be like, I don't really care about fantasy, or you can care about fantasy. All those, people that don't care and are like very vocal about it. Austin Eckler is the other side. He just is so vocal that he cares about it. And that's a guy you want on your fantasy team.
Absolutely. All right, next up, we've got the Sunday Night Football AFC North showdown. Steelers at Ravens. The final score was 16-13. Steelers end up winning this game. Ravens were favored by 2.5 points. They do not cover that spread, and the under hits at 35. So Pittsburgh 8-8 now, and definitely still has a chance to keep that record for Mike Tomlin alive in terms of having a winning season all throughout his tenure in Pittsburgh. Najee definitely had a strong game. 22 carries, 111 yards, 2 receptions, and 12 yards, and 1 touchdown on the game as well. But Jaren Warren was out there. I really like the 1-2 combination of Warren and Najee. 76 yards on 12 carries. He had four first downs. And on the Ravens side, Tyler Huntley, 14 passes, 130, and 1 touchdown, one interception that basically ended the game. Fitzpatrick came in and did some Minka magic. Dobbins had a late resurgence, 17 carries, 93 yards. I would take that on to the next year as a potential mid-round draft pick for Dobbins. And Mark Andrews had 9 catches on 9 receptions, 100 yards. And Isaiah Likely, 3 receptions, 12 yards, 1 touchdown and that sick route on Arthur Mollett. Mollett was just not able to guard Isaiah Likely, who's another guy that's unlike Godwin. He's a tight end playing in a receiver body, so that was definitely tough to guard. But the Steelers, they showed the grit. They were able to hold off the Ravens, only have them score 13 points, and that late drive by Pickett. There were talks about Matt Canada and Pickett's mics. They weren't working, so Pickett was calling his own calls, and those throws to Sims, the throws to Deontay Johnson late, that the things that we weren't seeing earlier on in the game, we saw that in that late drive, which led to the touchdown. And one of my biggest things with the Steelers was the fact that they're so predictable. It's just run, pass, run, pass, and it's very annoying to see Matt Canada calling the same things and these bubble screens over and over again. But that late drive and the late push allowed them to win the game. So kudos to Steelers, and kudos to Mike Tomlin for getting this win, and they still have a chance to make the playoffs. And so we'll see if that comes into fruition. It's a very slim chance, but certainly there's still a chance.
Yeah, to be there, to have a chance heading into the final week. I mean, what was this team? 2-7, Shovit? They were like 2-7 or 2-6. Like, they were not good. 1-6, something like that. And they've really turned it around the second half. And it's, again, you can't really point to like concrete things in the sense that it's not like one player has just been taking over. It's not like Justin Jefferson's having career year, but that's exactly why I have so much faith in a team like the Steelers, because they're so well coached. Like, their quarterback's a rookie. Like, they have receivers that drop passes. Like, Najee Harris hasn't been running the ball well. Their defense was in shambles at times, like gashed in the run, gashed in the pass. But all of that, it's just like for spurts. When push comes to shove, to corral his team, to get them together, man, there's really no better guy than Mike Tomlin. And side note, it was really awesome to hear him talk, because he's from Pittsburgh, and Damar Hamlin went to college at Pittsburgh. And so Tomlin's known that guy since he was like 12 years old. So Tomlin was incredibly emotional about it. He gave a really good speech after the game. So I thought that was fantastic. Yeah. But Tomlin's the dude, man. He's the dude. It's so nice when the infrastructure for your franchise is there. It's been there. Like, he's been the guy for so long. And, having a quarterback with question marks, having a team with question marks, still they can, get things done because they just corral and come together and make big plays because they want to play for their coach. Like, who doesn't want to play for Mike Tomlin?
One thing I want to add is that there's a video that surfaced with I think it's Ryan Clark. He was injured one year, and then he wanted to get back into the game after he was coming off an injury, and Mike Tomlin was there, and he's like, I wouldn't let my son come back in the game. And that's kind of the leadership that he has on this team. Yep. And there's a lot of Steelers fans. I don't know how many Steelers fans listen to our podcast, but there's a lot of Steelers fans on Twitter saying Mike Tomlin has to go. He's not the guy. He's not allowing, like, we won one Super Bowl, but that was like a decade ago. And it's ridiculous to think that when what Tomlin brings out of these players is invaluable. And so for that reason,
100%.
Offensive coordinator can go, but Mike Tomlin has got to say it, and hats off to him, man, to leading this team.
Yeah, I'm rooting for them, man. Who did they play this last week? Do you know who they play week 18?
The Browns, I believe.
Okay, so I'm taking the Steelers that game. Yeah. I think they're going to win, and they're obviously going to need to get help, but they're going to do everything in their part to control their aspect of the destiny. Because again, dude, push comes to shove, man, I am taking Mike Tomlin 10 out of 10 times. So fantastic to see. They win the game. We'll see if they can go 9-8, get that record, and somehow, man, creep into the playoffs, because that would make the wild card weekend so much more exciting for all of us. that is it for the rundown. Obviously, you guys know the story with Monday Night Football being postponed, so we are still waiting on word. We still haven't gotten any updates on anything Damar Hamlin related, so we're still hoping for good news. Shishot had to leave the episode early because he is a doctor. He has, called the duty, and that's very, very important. So we're going to try to run the awards section and kind of end this episode. And obviously I didn't even talk about it because we started the episode talking about Damar Hamlin, and that's so important. But this is our 100th episode as the only playbook. I mean, we hit the century mark. I think that's insane. It doesn't seem like that many episodes have flown by, but that's the nature of doing this, right? And for anybody that's listened to us, that supported us, I mean, we're incredibly grateful, incredibly thankful. We're not going anywhere. The best is obviously still yet to come. So for people that have supported us this far, I mean, thank you guys so much for the support. Keep supporting us. Tell people about us. We love doing this, and we think we bring a lot of valuable stuff to the table. So episode 100, man, kudos to you, for everything you've done and all the time you've dedicated to the podcast as well. I don't think we'd be here without any one of us putting in the time and dedication that we have.
Yeah, it's been a fun ride.
Yeah, fun ride, and the ride is just beginning.
That's
so
right.
Let's kick it into awards. Shovit, I'll kick us off. My award for this week is "And the Reason Is You."
Ooh, I don't know this one. Who could it be?
So I wanted to give out positive awards, but this one just kind of came to me, and it was so hard for me to not go with this. This award goes to Derek Carr. Derek Carr, you are the reason that the Raiders are so bad. You are the reason why the Raiders are in shambles. I know you can point to a lot of other issues that the Raiders have had: coaching, player personnel in and out, like always off-field stuff that's a distraction, etc. But the one constant throughout all of this, throughout all of our time, and again, we can't put a grasp on why the Raiders aren't good enough. We can't put a grasp on why Derek Carr doesn't take that next step, or why he's not, pushing this Raiders team beyond mediocrity. And I think, the consensus is it was Derek Carr. Like, I don't think Derek Carr's a bad quarterback. I think he'll still be good. I think he can be successful in a different system, different scheme, just a different, he just needs to get out of Vegas, basically. And so I still have hope for Derek Carr as a quarterback in the NFL. I just think the reason why the Raiders continued to be who they were is because of Derek Carr. So Derek Carr, unfortunately, you get my "And the Reason Is You" award.
All right. I'll do my award. We know what's funny is you'll find out soon enough. My award is Bye Bye Bye. So if you can guess who that is.
Oh man, is it another one of these Derek Carr type people?
It absolutely is. It is Derek Carr. I had no idea.
No, it's not. It's not. Your award is also Derek Carr. What are the chances, bro?
Bye Bye Bye, because I think he has seen his last games as a Raider, and we saw what Jarrett Stidham did last week, and so he definitely is the answer. And the fact that they were not targeting Devontae Adams all up until like the last game of the season, like it's just atrocious to see. And I think that for that reason, Derek Carr's got to go, and he gets the Bye 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 in sync award.
I love it, man. We're doubling down on Derek Carr. Not a great week for Derek Carr. Hopefully he doesn't listen to the podcast, but that's two bad awards for Derek Carr. I will do Shishot's award for us. Shishot has the Prepare for Takeoff award. And I mean, he already texted us, so I don't be like, Shovit, do you know who the award for? This award goes to Mr. Jarek, the Jet McKinnon, because this dude has taken off. I mean, we talk about late season surges and resurgences for players that can win you fantasy. Jarek McKinnon is probably a fantasy winner, right? Like, I mean, if you picked up Jarek McKinnon and you've been starting him since week 11 or 12, I mean, he's been, I need to go back and see where he is on the RB rankings, but I would bet my money that he is top 5 running back since week 11. And so that's for somebody who is a split carry player, for somebody who is more of a pass catching receiver, only on third or running back, more on third downs than like first and second down work, for him to produce the way he has produced. Obviously it's Patty Mahomes, right? So he makes everything so much easier for the players around him. But man, Jarek McKinnon, Jet McKinnon, he's taken off. I mean, he's taken off the last 6-7 weeks. I think this 7-week span has allowed us to have the mindset that, we can prepare for takeoff for Jarek McKinnon, because his value next season in fantasy football is going to be immense. They've already seen what he can do. I don't expect, Andy Reid, the mastermind, and Patrick Mahomes, the best quarterback in the NFL to be like, hey, this guy had been phenomenal for us. We're not going to use him anymore. So I expect more healthy dosage of Jerick McKinnon. They're probably, I can't remember if he's on a 1-year deal, but if he is, look for them to re-sign him and continue to use him the way they have. But phenomenal, second half of the season. He definitely probably won a lot of people their fantasy football leagues.
Yeah, I think if you look at the stats and you look at the whole year, you'll see that he's probably not as high. Like he's not a top 10 running back. But if
Right.
he was injured, and when he came back from the injury, when you thought that Pacheco was going to be the lead back and he was going to get most of those points, he was the guy. And when you started, when he was available to be started, he's definitely been a league winner since then. So yeah.
Yeah, RB. So he's right now through 17 weeks, he's RB21, right? RB21, where he didn't have a single double-digit performance since till week 13. So he's RB21 on the year with not a single double-digit performance since till week 13. Week 13, he had 13 points, 14, 28.9, 15, 30.2, 16, 11.3, and 17, 20.1. I mean, man, for a guy that you just found on the waivers, like that guy did better than, most running backs not named CMC or Austin Eckler. So unbelievable performance for him. Kudos to him. And yeah, prepare for takeoff for 2024 for Jerick McKinnon. Those are the awards. Let's hand out our brownie points. My brownie points, no brainer for me, man. I picked this guy up. I streamed him, and he was an animal. Daniel Jones was the quarterback 2 this week, 36.18 fantasy points. He is through 17 weeks, shove it, QB7 on the season. And that just goes to show how valuable quarterbacks that can utilize their legs in fantasy football are, right? That's why Justin Fields is a fantasy god, but we still haven't seen anything from Justin Fields from a passing perspective. So just imagine the upside if Justin Fields can just be an average passer. But Daniel Jones, man, quarterback 7 on the season. He was a streaming option for a lot of players, in the playoffs after, the Lamar injury, after the Kyler injury, after the Hurts injury. And so if you utilize Daniel Jones, you played him in the playoffs, back-to-back phenomenal performances. And in the finals, there's really only one quarterback had a better week than Daniel Jones. And I think that was Patrick Mahomes, I believe, maybe. But other than that, fantastic week. Daniel Jones, you get every single brownie point possible because you are the reason I am currently handily winning my matchup pending all of this Monday night information.
Yeah, I think Patrick Mahomes is up there. Daniel Jones is, Jared Goff may have been up there, but yeah, 36 points. Those 2 runs were so good for Daniel Jones owners. All right, so my brownie points is going to go to the Packers defense this week. 23 fantasy points. Like I said, Justin Jefferson was shut down. They got a kick return. They get a pick 6 and 4 total turnovers. That in itself, just 23 points gives you the brownie points for sure. Anytime a defense gets, more than 10 points, I'd be happy for it. But 23 against the Vikings defense who can score. They have the ability. Whether or not they do it or not, that's a different story. But they have the ability to score, and the Packers defense just showed up this week.
Yeah, when they needed it, playoffs on the line, they definitely showed up. So a great performance for them. Those are the brownie points. I want to end the episode doing something unique. Obviously, fantasy football season for most people is on the cusp of being over. So I wanted to take us back and have each one of us kind of go through what our hottest takes were that came to fruition and what our coldest takes were that were just so far off. And just a fun little thing to do. For me, I'll kick us off, Shovit. My hottest take, it wasn't that hot of a take, but I did say Justin Jefferson was going to finish this year as wide receiver 1. It's not a hot take considering that he was projected as wide receiver 2, but it is a hot take in the sense that it's really hard to supersede a guy like Cooper Kupp with the production that he had, right? Now, obviously, Cooper Kupp had to get hurt. Matthew Stafford got hurt, but injuries are something we cannot control. And, it's not like he got hurt and Jefferson, lucked into the first spot. He's had a historical year. He's about to break, receiving records with one final game to go. So for me, solidifying Justin Jefferson as number 1 wide receiver that we talked about, with our wide receiver rankings early in the season, with KOC coming over, thinking that he was going to get used like Kupp was getting used at the Rams. A little bit different, but they do use him, in the slot a lot more this year. And all of that to say he ended up through 17 weeks. He's currently wide receiver 1. So I would say for me, that's probably my hottest take. Piggyback that with I did say my best bet of the season was the Vikings over 8.5 or 9 wins as their win total. They're currently at 12 wins. So that got absolutely obliterated. So if you got on that train, if you felt like the Vikings were going to have a better than 8.5, 9 win season, you cashed that with ease. So for me, those were my hottest takes that ended up paying off. My coldest take of the year, I thought Juju Smith-Schuster was going to be a league winner. He's had a decent day, but it has not, or year, but it has not been, a true wide receiver 1 type year. He finishes through 17 weeks as wide receiver 29. So suffice to say, he's definitely not, he may be on teams that win championships, but he's not the reason you're winning your league. So for me, that would be my coldest take.
Yeah, I think with the Juju thing, if you look back at what Tyreek Hill did with the Chiefs, you would expect like the same thing for wide receiver 1 in the Kansas City Chiefs land. But no receiver had a great year fantasy wise, and Kelsey's probably the only guy. Kelsey, I mean, the running back situation we know, but Kelsey's the only, I guess, receiver or tight end that had um, points that you expected.
Yeah.
All right, my hot take for this year was a guy who I thought was going to be someone that's going to get you to the playoffs and that late contention, and even in the playoffs, I thought that he would allow you to win the games. Was Justin Fields? He's a quarterback now. He's at QB3 for the year. He's got 1,000 rushing yards, 8 touchdowns. He's not a guy that people may have drafted. He probably maybe he was one of the later picks, or maybe he was a guy that you picked off the waiver claims. But he was a guy in the beginning of the year who I said could be a league winner for you. I wouldn't say I completely hit on that because I don't think he may have been a league winner just because his last playoff games in terms of fantasy, he didn't really show up. But last game he still had, I think, 18 points, which is okay for a quarterback position. And so I think, but in terms of getting you to the playoffs, Justin Fields was that guy. That late resurgence after week 10 was amazing. That 40-point back-to-back plus 40, 40 and the 50. I mean, that was not, you didn't get that anywhere else as far as where he was drafted. And my coldest take, unfortunately, was my boy, Najee Harris, finishing at RB21. Probably a guy that people drafted in the first round, maybe early second round. But his fantasy production was not what you wanted to see. And the offensive lineman, wasn't really giving him a lot of chances to get you the touchdowns. And he also looked like he didn't look like a downhill back. He was going left and right. And Warren came at times, looked a lot better. You thought that Najee Harris was going to get some of those dump offs and they were going to force feed him the ball. That we didn't see a lot of that either. So Najee Harris let me down this year. So he's the cold take that I had.
Yeah. I mean, I would have been on that train with you, man. I was so high on Najee Harris coming into this season, and it's nice to see, like, since week 12 or 13, he's been good. I think he's been like RB6 or something like that. So he has kind of scaled back into his own as the Steelers have started to figure things out. So, it's safe to say that I'm still not worried about Najee because the times he was struggling, the entire team was struggling, right? And then the times he got it together, the team got it together. So it's kind of going hand in hand or coinciding. So, cold take, but I would have been right there with you. I would have drafted Najee if he fell to me. Shishot's hot take and cold take. Shishot's hottest take was he thought Austin Eckler was going to be RB1. And what is Austin Eckler? He is RB1. Yeah, I don't really know anybody that truly had that. I mean, he was a stud. I just felt like for him having 20 touchdowns last year, and I think he finished, I don't know if he was RB1 last year. RB1, he was top 3. He might have been 1, but
I think Jonathan Taylor was RB1, and then Eckler may have been 2.
Okay. So like 20 touchdowns for a running back in a season is astronomical, right? So touchdown regression was the biggest reason why I felt like he couldn't replicate what he did. And then you would think, like, you saw Herbert he dropped off from last year, like, statistically, right? And so his fantasy season wasn't as great, but that didn't matter. The constant was Austin Eckler. He still ends up currently through 17 weeks as the RB1. And so, I mean, that's an impressive take. And there's really no slowing down for Austin Eckler. Like we talked about, heading into next season, you're thinking about Austin Eckler or CMC as the number 1 pick. So that's a great hot take by Shishot. His coldest take, his wide receiver rankings, he had Cooper Kupp, Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb, Jamar Chase, and he had Deebo Samuel. And then he had Adams, Hill, and Diggs. One of these things is not like the other, and that is Deebo Samuel. That's a tough one, right? I mean, I think we all had Deebo in our top 10, but I was personally the lowest on Deebo, and somehow I ended up drafting him in our league. But because of the concerns of him saying he didn't want to run. He wanted to be strictly a receiver and all that. And so, that's not really the reason he fell to where he is. Injuries, Trey Lance getting hurt, and then Jimmy G getting hurt, playing with the third string quarterback. Like, there were so many variables for Debo not finishing the season the way, he possibly could have. But, I would say if that's your coldest take on the season, you did pretty well for yourself. So for me, for Shisho, that is his coldest take, was the Debo Samuel finishing as a top 5 wide receiver. But again, injuries and everything, something we can't really speculate on. It'll be interesting, if we keep track of some of these, every year and just kind of think back and be like, why did I think this was going to be the way it was? And why did it not work out the way it did? Was it just me clearly misreading the situation, or was it variables that are out of my control, like injuries, things like that? Those don't, to me, in my opinion, aren't considered cold takes or hot takes if injuries come into play. But if I was like, yeah, Derek Carr is going to be a top 5 quarterback this year, and we saw what Derek Carr was, I'd say that's a pretty cold take.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, that's the episode, Shovit. Do you have anything else for us as we officially end our 100th episode of The Only Playbook?
No, thank you to all of our viewers and the guys that keep listening. And, thanks. You guys are the reasons why we do this. But like you mentioned, more things to come. Off season's coming. We're going to hit it hard. We're going to provide a lot of good material out there. So stay tuned, keep listening, and just thank you to all of our viewers.
Yeah, I mean, we cannot be grateful enough. Again, it's a community. It's slow growing. It's slow moving. It's a saturated world and a saturated market. But we love what we do, and we think we're good at it. And we believe we're good at it. So for everybody that's supported us so far, thank you guys so much. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe, hit the notification button, turn that notification button on so you know when we post our videos. If you're listening to us on any podcast platform you possibly can. Leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. That is a way to get other, more recognition and help spread the word about this community. And we're on social media, Instagram at The Only Playbook, TikTok at The Only Playbook, and Twitter at Only Playbook. Twitter is where we typically update on injuries and anything like that. So turn your notifications on there. We will be as active as possible in the off season. The show does not end after this season ends. So again, thank you guys so much for all of the support. I'm Sweetcar. That's Shovit. Shishot was here with us. He's too busy being a doctor and saving lives. We are The Only Playbook. Have a fantastic week. We're continuing to pray and keep Damar Hamlin in our thoughts, and let's hope for great news there. But thank you guys so much for tuning in. Have a fantastic week. Take care.